The wrong door. Dominic Hayes dragged himself through the corridor of Station Epsilon, his vision blurring at the edges. 36 hours straight in the engine core, wrestling with plasma conduits that kept threatening to blow half the station into the void. His hands still trembled from adrenaline, his coveralls stained with coolant and sweat. All he wanted was sleep. His quarters were on level 7, room 742. He'd memorized the path months ago when he first arrived at this joint colony station where humans and the Valenti species coexisted in uneasy partnership. The Valenti were elegant beings, their society built on ceremony and ancient traditions that most humans found baffling. Dominic didn't care about any of that right now. He just needed a bed. The corridor lights had dimmed to night cycle, casting everything in soft blue shadows. His boots scuffed against the metal floor as he turned the corner, barely registering the ornate patterns etched into the walls. This section looked fancier than he remembered, but exhaustion made everything fuzzy. Room 742. The door panel glowed green when he approached. His tired brain didn't question why it opened without his keycard. He stumbled inside, the door hissing shut behind him. The room smelled different. Something floral and sweet, nothing like his usual quarters. Dominic's foggy mind dismissed it. He kicked off his boots and collapsed onto the bed, sinking into softness that felt far more luxurious than his standard-issue mattress. His hand landed on something warm and decidedly not pillow-like. A sharp gasp cut through the darkness. Light exploded across the room, so bright Dominic flinched and threw an arm over his face. When his eyes adjusted, he found himself staring at skin the color of lavender twilight. A woman sat beside him in the bed, sheets pulled around her waist, silver eyes wide with shock. She was small, delicate, her frame barely reaching his shoulder even sitting up. Her hair fell in waves of pearl white down her bare shoulders, and her features held that ethereal quality all Valenti possessed. But it was her size that struck him most. She was tiny compared to him, almost fragile-looking, though the fury blazing in her silver eyes suggested she was anything but helpless. Dominic scrambled backward, his exhausted brain finally catching up to the situation. He raised both hands in surrender. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Wrong room. I thought this was mine." The tiny alien woman's chest rose and fell rapidly, her eyes darting from him to something on the floor. His tool bag. Then to the door. Then back to him. Before either could speak again, panels in the walls snapped open with mechanical precision. 4 armored figures emerged, weapons trained on Dominic. "Don't move, human." Dominic froze, hands still raised. His heart hammered against his ribs. The woman stood slowly, wrapping a silken robe around herself. Despite her small stature, she radiated authority that filled the room. She stepped closer to the bed, her bare feet silent on the polished floor. "You entered my private chambers," she said, her voice soft but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut steel. "Do you understand what you've done?" Dominic swallowed hard. "I made a mistake. A really, really bad mistake. I've been working for 36 hours straight, and I just wanted to sleep. I didn't mean to intrude." One of the guards laughed, a harsh sound. "Ignorance is no defense against violating the sacred separation." The woman raised one delicate hand, and immediate silence fell. Her silver eyes studied Dominic with unnerving intensity. She moved closer, and he realized just how petite she truly was. The top of her head would barely reach his chest if they stood together. "My name is Seris Valen," she said. "I am first daughter of the Valen house, heir to the council seat of my family." Dominic's stomach dropped. Of course. Of course he'd stumbled into nobility's quarters. "Dominic Hayes," he managed. "Maintenance engineering. Level 9 clearance. I swear I didn't know this was your room." The door was green. It just opened. Ceres's eyes narrowed slightly at that detail, but she didn't comment on it. Instead, she turned to address the guards without taking her gaze off him. "He crossed the threshold of my private sanctuary uninvited. He made physical contact with my person. These facts are witnessed and undeniable." "Then the law is clear," one guard stated. "Execution at dawn." The words hit Dominic like a physical blow. What? For walking into the wrong room? For violating the sacred separation, Seris corrected, her voice still maddeningly calm. Our laws protect the sanctity of private chambers, especially those of unmated nobility. The penalty has been unchanged for 3,000 years. Dominic's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. He survived hull breaches and reactor meltdowns only to die because he was too tired to read a room number correctly. There has to be another way, he said desperately. Some kind of fine or punishment that doesn't involve killing me. The guards moved closer, clearly ready to drag him away. But Seris held up her hand again, stopping them. Something flickered across her delicate features. Calculation. Decision. Her silver eyes locked onto his with sudden intensity. There is one alternative, she said slowly. One path permitted by our oldest laws. Hope flared in Dominic's chest. Anything. I'll do anything. The Kelthra bond, Seris announced, her voice ringing clear. I invoke it. The guards went rigid. One of them stepped forward. Lady Seris, you cannot be serious. The Kelthra has not been invoked in centuries. The law remains valid, she countered. I am unmated. He violated my sanctuary. Under ancient code, I may claim him as compensation rather than demand his death. Dominic's hope wavered. Claim me? What does that mean? Seris finally looked directly at him, her expression unreadable. It means instead of executing you for your crime, I bind you to myself. You become mine in the eyes of the law. My responsibility. My possession. My bound partner. Partner. Dominic echoed. The Kelthra bond is sacred, one guard explained reluctantly. It ties two lives together permanently. What happens to one affects the other. It was designed to preserve honor when violations occurred between potential mates. Dominic's exhausted brain struggled to process this. So instead of dying, I become your property. Essentially, Seris said. Though the bond carries more complexity than simple ownership. You would live, but your life would no longer be entirely your own. She stepped even closer, tilting her head back to look up at him. Despite her tiny frame, she seemed to tower over him in that moment. The choice is yours to make, she said softly. Death before sunrise, or the Kelthra bond. Decide now. Dominic looked at the guards, their weapons, the cold certainty in their postures. Then he looked back at the tiny alien woman before him, this Seris Valen who held his life in her delicate hands. Living as someone's bound partner had to be better than not living at all. I accept the bond, he said. Seris nodded once, sharp and decisive. She turned to the guards. Summon the council. We perform the Kelthra ceremony immediately. The binding ceremony. They took him to a chamber deep within the station's Valenti sector, a place humans rarely saw. The room was circular, walls carved with symbols that seemed to glow with their own inner light. 6 council members sat in elevated seats arranged in a semicircle, all regarding Dominic with expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. Seris stood beside him, now dressed in formal robes of silver and violet that made her look even more ethereal and impossibly small next to his larger human frame. An elder Valenti rose from the center seat, his skin a deeper purple than Seris's lavender, his eyes ancient and knowing. Seris Valen, you invoke the Kelthra bond for this human who violated your sacred space. I do, Elder Corin, Seris replied, her voice steady. You understand this bond is permanent? That his actions become yours, his failures your responsibility. I understand fully. Dominic wanted to interrupt, to ask exactly what he was agreeing to, but a warning glance from Seris kept him silent. Elder Corin's gaze shifted to Dominic. And you, human. You accept this bond willingly. I accept, Dominic said, his voice rougher than intended. The elder nodded slowly. An attendant approached carrying a silver collar on a cushion. It was delicate but clearly strong, etched with the same glowing symbols that covered the walls. Seris took the collar herself. She gestured for Dominic to kneel. He hesitated only a moment before dropping to one knee, bringing himself closer to her height. Up close, he could see the faint silver patterns that traced across her lavender skin, could smell that floral scent he'd noticed in her chambers. She lifted the collar, and he felt the cool metal settle around his throat. It adjusted automatically, fitting perfectly. The moment it sealed, warmth spread through his chest, and he felt something else. A presence. A connection to the tiny woman before him, faint but unmistakable. Seris's eyes widened slightly. She felt it too. "The bond is sealed," Elder Corrin announced. "Dominic Hayes, you are no longer a criminal condemned. You are bound to Seris Valen, and she to you. May wisdom guide you both." The council members rose and departed, leaving Dominic and Seris alone in the glowing chamber. Seris studied him, her expression more complex than before. "Can you feel it?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Dominic admitted. "Like a thread between us." "That thread will grow stronger," she said. "In time, we will sense each other's presence, perhaps even emotions. The bond is designed to create unity between two souls." She turned and walked toward the exit, her small form moving with fluid grace.
Come.
"We have much to discuss, and dawn approaches." Dominic stood, his hand unconsciously touching the collar around his neck, and followed the tiny alien woman who now controlled his fate. Neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows, silver eyes gleaming with satisfaction as the first piece of a carefully laid plan fell into place, new reality. Morning light filtered through the crystalline windows of Seris's quarters when Dominic woke. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the collar hummed softly against his throat, and everything came rushing back. He sat up on the sleeping platform Seris had assigned him in the adjacent room. Through the open archway, he could see her moving gracefully through her main chamber, her tiny frame draped in flowing robes of pale blue. The bond pulsed gently in his chest. He could feel her presence now, a warm point of awareness that told him exactly where she was even without seeing her. "You're awake," Seris called without turning around. "The bond informs me of your state." Dominic stood and walked to the archway. "Does it work both ways?" "Yes." She finally looked at him, her silver eyes assessing. "I can feel you as well. Your confusion. Your frustration. Your fear." He leaned against the doorframe. "Not exactly how I planned to spend my career on this station." Something almost like sympathy crossed her delicate features. "Nor did I plan to bind myself to a human I met under such circumstances." She gestured to a table where food waited. "Eat. We have work to do." Dominic approached the table, studying the unfamiliar Valenti dishes alongside what looked like human rations someone had thoughtfully included. "Work." Seris sat across from him, looking even tinier in the large chair. "I don't believe your entry to my chambers was accidental." That got his attention. "What do you mean?" "You said the door showed green. Your access level shouldn't have granted entry to private noble quarters." She activated a holographic display between them. "I've been reviewing security logs from last night." Dominic leaned forward, his engineering mind engaging. The logs showed normal readings until exactly the moment he'd approached her door. Then there was a spike, barely noticeable. "Someone overrode the security," he said slowly. "Precisely." Seris expanded the data. A sophisticated hack, designed to appear as a system glitch. It unlocked my door and registered it as green for exactly 47 seconds. Long enough for an exhausted engineer to stumble through. Dominic's blood ran cold. "Someone set me up." "Set us both up," Seris corrected. Her jaw tightened. "I have enemies on the council. Rivals who would love nothing more than to discredit me, to make me appear reckless and unfit for my position." "And what better way than to force you into a scandal?" Dominic finished. "Either you let them execute me and look merciless, or you invoke some ancient law and bind yourself to a random human, looking desperate and foolish. You understand politics better than I expected." Seris's silver eyes met his. "The question is who had the technical skill and the motive." Dominic studied the data streams more carefully. This wasn't just someone with access. This was someone who understood human work schedules, knew when I'd be exhausted enough to not notice discrepancies, and knew Valenti law well enough to predict your options. That narrows our suspects considerably. Seris pulled up profiles of several Valenti officials. These three have both technical capabilities and political motivation. Dominic examined the faces. One caught his attention. Him. Theron Calix. He's been watching you. Seris tilted her head. How do you know? I've seen him in the maintenance corridors near your sector. Thought it was odd at the time, a council member that far from the administrative levels. Dominic tapped the image. He always looked angry when he didn't think anyone was watching. Theron has wanted my council seat for years, Seris said softly. He believes humans are inferior and that our alliance with your species weakens us. Having me bound to a human would be his perfect weapon. So what do we do about it? Seris looked at him with something approaching respect. We investigate. Carefully. If Theron orchestrated this, he'll be watching for any sign that we suspect him. Then we need to appear like what he expects, Dominic said. A noblewoman stuck with an unwanted human burden, going through the motions of the bond because honor demands it. A small smile curved Seris's lips. You continue to surprise me, Dominic Hayes. Hidden truths. Over the following days, they fell into a careful routine. In public, Seris treated Dominic with cool formality, as expected of someone managing an inconvenient bond. In private, they worked together, digging through data and following trails of evidence. Dominic discovered he liked working with her. Despite her tiny stature, Seris possessed a sharp mind and a determination that matched his own. She asked intelligent questions about the technical aspects of the hack, while he learned the nuances of Valenti politics from her patient explanations. The bond between them grew stronger. He began sensing not just her location but her moods. When she was frustrated, he felt a tightness in his chest. When she was pleased, warmth bloomed through the connection. One evening, as they reviewed surveillance footage in her private office, Dominic felt something new through the bond. A flutter of nervousness from Seris that seemed unrelated to their investigation. He looked up to find her watching him, a strange expression on her delicate face. What is it? He asked. Seris hesitated, unusual for her. I've been considering something. The bond we share is meant to create unity, but it requires both parties to be open to it, to accept each other fully. I thought we were doing that, Dominic said. Professionally, yes. She stood and moved to the window, her tiny silhouette framed against the stars beyond. But the Kelthra bond was designed for mates, Dominic. Partners in all aspects of life. We've been treating it as merely a legal arrangement. Understanding dawned. You think we should try to make the bond stronger, more real? I think if we don't, we leave ourselves vulnerable. She turned to face him. A half-formed bond can be challenged in council. Theron could argue it's invalid, that we're merely going through motions. But a true Kelthra bond, one where both parties are genuinely connected, cannot be broken by outside interference. Dominic stood and approached her slowly. What would that require? Honesty, Seris said quietly. Trust. Spending time together not as investigator and assistant, but as two people learning who the other truly is. He stopped a few feet away, looking down at her upturned face. I'm willing to try if you are. Relief flickered through the bond. Then we begin tonight. Tell me about yourself, Dominic Hayes. Not the engineer. The person. They talked for hours. Dominic told her about growing up on Earth, about losing his parents young and finding solace in fixing broken things. About joining the Space Corps to see the universe and ending up on this station repairing reactors. Seris shared her own story. The pressure of being born into nobility, expected to be perfect from childhood. The loneliness of her position, unable to trust anyone's motives. The weight of knowing her every action reflected on her entire family line. I'm tired of being alone, she admitted as the night cycle deepened. I've been isolated my whole life, surrounded by people but truly known by none of them. I know something about that, Dominic said. It's hard to connect with people when you're always moving, always working. Seris looked at him, really looked at him, and Dominic felt the bond pulse with something warmer than before. Perhaps we were both lonely until someone made a terrible mistake with a door code. He laughed softly. Strangest meet cute in history. Meet cute. Seris tilted her head, confused by the human phrase. It's what we call the story of how two people first met. Usually in romantic contexts. He paused. Sorry, that was probably inappropriate given our situation. But Seris smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her features. No. I think I like that. A meet-cute engineered by our enemies that might become something they never intended. Growing connection. The investigation continued, but something had shifted between them. Dominic found himself looking forward to their evening conversations, to learning new things about the tiny alien woman who had saved his life. Seris laughed more often, her usual formal demeanor relaxing when they were alone. The physical awareness grew too. Dominic noticed how gracefully she moved, how her silver eyes caught the light, how her small hand felt when it accidentally brushed his while reaching for the same data tablet. And through the bond, he felt her noticing him in return. The flutter when he smiled at her. The warmth when he said something that pleased her. The spike of something electric when they stood close together. One night, while reviewing financial records, Dominic found what they'd been searching for. A payment trail leading from Theron Calix to a human hacker known for security breaches. This is it, he said excitedly. Proof that Theron hired someone to override your door systems. Seris leaned over his shoulder to examine the screen, her tiny frame pressed against his side. You found him. Dominic, this is exactly what we need. He turned his head to respond and found her face inches from his. They froze, suddenly aware of how close they were. Dominic felt his heart hammering and knew through the bond that hers was racing too. Seris, he said softly. She didn't pull away. Instead, her silver eyes searched his face. The bond tells me what you're feeling. What am I feeling? He asked. The same thing I am. Her voice was barely a whisper. Something we didn't expect. Something that frightens us both. Dominic raised his hand slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. When she didn't, he gently cupped her delicate face. I don't know when it happened, but this stopped being just about survival. I know. Seris's eyes fluttered closed as she leaned into his touch. I feel it too. Through the bond and beyond it. He leaned down, closing the distance between them carefully. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, a question asked and answered. The bond flared bright and warm, flooding them both with shared emotion. When they finally pulled apart, Seris was smiling. The bond approves. Dominic laughed, keeping her close. I approve too. A loud chime shattered the moment. The door panel was flashing red. Security alert. Seris pulled away, her expression instantly shifting to alarm. Someone's trying to access my quarters. Dominic checked the security feed and cursed. Guards. A lot of them. And Theron's leading them. He knows we found evidence, Seris said. He's moving against us before we can reveal it. The door began cycling open. Dominic grabbed Seris's hand. Is there another way out? The maintenance shaft. She pulled him toward a hidden panel. But Dominic, if we run, it looks like guilt. If we stay, he'll find a way to eliminate us both. Dominic pried open the panel. We need time to get this evidence to someone who'll actually listen. Seris hesitated only a moment before nodding. Together, they slipped into the maintenance corridor as her quarters filled with armed guards behind them. As they ran through the narrow passages, Dominic realized that somewhere in the chaos of investigation and danger, his fake bond with this tiny alien woman had become real. And now he'd do whatever it took to keep her safe running in the dark. The maintenance corridors were cramped and dark, designed for service robots and the occasional engineer, not fleeing fugitives. Dominic led the way through passages he'd memorized during months of repairs, Seris's small hand gripped firmly in his. Behind them, shouts echoed. Theron's guards were searching, but they didn't know these spaces like Dominic did. Where are we going? Seris asked, her breath coming quick. Engineering level. There's someone there we can trust. Dominic pulled her around a corner, pressing them both flat against the wall as footsteps pounded past their hiding spot. Through the bond, he felt her fear mixed with trust. She believed he could get them to safety. The weight of that faith made him more determined. They descended 3 levels through emergency ladders before reaching the engineering section. Dominic knocked a specific pattern on a maintenance door. It opened to reveal a woman with dark skin and suspicious eyes. "Hayes, what are you doing sneaking around at night with a Valenti noble?" "Myra, I need help." Dominic ushered Seris inside quickly. "We have evidence that Theron Calix committed a crime, but is trying to eliminate us before we can present it." Myra Chen, senior engineering officer, studied them both. "That's a serious accusation." "We have proof." Seris stepped forward despite her small size, radiating authority. "Financial records and system logs showing he hired someone to hack my security systems." Myra's expression shifted. "Show me." They spent the next hour reviewing everything while Myra asked pointed questions. Finally, she sat back. "This is solid. But presenting it to the council won't work. Theron has allies there who'll bury it." She looked at Seris. "There is another option. Under Valenti law, you can call for a trial of truth." Seris went pale. "That hasn't been invoked in decades." "What is it?" Dominic asked. "A formal challenge where both parties present their case before the full assembly, not just the council," Myra explained. "No one can refuse it, and the verdict is binding. But it's dangerous. Theron will use it to attack not just the evidence, but you personally." "And the Kelthra bond," Seris added quietly. "He'll claim it's false, that I used it improperly." Dominic felt her anxiety through their connection. He squeezed her hand. "Then we prove the bond is real." Seris looked up at him, her silver eyes searching his face. "Dominic, a trial of truth doesn't just examine evidence. It examines the people involved. They'll question everything, including our feelings for each other." "Let them," he said firmly. "I know what I feel." "Do you?" Through the bond, warmth flooded between them. Seris's small fingers tightened on his. "Yes. I know." Myra cleared her throat. "So we're doing this." "We're doing this," Seris confirmed. "The trial begins." The assembly hall was packed when they arrived 2 days later. Word had spread that Seris Valen was calling for a trial of truth against Theron Calix. Both species filled the galleries, humans and Valenti alike eager to witness the confrontation. Dominic stood beside Seris in the center of the hall, very aware of every eye on them. She looked regal in formal robes of silver and violet, but he could feel her nervousness through the bond. He sent reassurance back through their connection. Her tiny hand briefly touched his in acknowledgement. Theron stood across from them, confident and sneering. He was larger than most Valenti males, imposing where Seris was delicate. Elder Corin presided from the central seat, his ancient face grave. "We convene this trial of truth at the request of Seris Valen. Present your claim." Seris stepped forward. "I accuse Theron Calix of orchestrating a crime against my person. He hired a hacker to override my private security, creating circumstances that would force me into scandal or cruelty, thereby destroying my political standing." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Theron laughed, the sound harsh. "Ridiculous. She makes desperate accusations to hide her own poor judgment. Look at her, bound to a human through the Kelthra. She demeans our oldest traditions." "I have evidence," Seris said calmly. She presented the financial records and system logs. Myra testified about the technical aspects of the hack. Everything was laid out clearly and precisely. Theron's confident expression wavered, but he recovered quickly. "Circumstantial. Coincidental. And even if true, it doesn't change the fundamental issue. She used the Kelthra bond improperly, binding herself to this human in a mockery of sacred law." "The Kelthra is valid," Seris countered. "Is it?" Theron stepped closer. The Kelthra was designed for genuine mates, for pairs who share true connection. Not for political convenience. He gestured dismissively at Dominic. You barely knew this human when you claimed him. You invoked sacred law to save a stranger. That is corruption of tradition. Elder Corin raised his hand. Theron Calix raises a point worth examining. The validity of the Kelthra bond is relevant to this trial. He looked at Seris and Dominic. The law requires genuine connection between bonded pairs. We must determine if yours meets that standard. Dominic felt Seris's spike of alarm. This was what she'd feared. Their bond, their feelings, about to be examined and judged by strangers. How do you propose to measure genuine connection? Seris asked carefully. The traditional method, Elder Corin said. The resonance test. A device was brought forward, an elegant sphere of crystal and silver. Dominic had never seen anything like it. Both parties will hold the resonance sphere, the elder explained. It reads the bond between you, measuring its depth and authenticity. A false bond shows weak resonance. A true Kelthra bond creates harmonic resonance that cannot be faked. Theron smiled coldly. Let's see how genuine your connection truly is. Seris looked at Dominic, and through the bond, he felt her question. He answered silently with certainty and love. Together, they approached the sphere. Truth revealed. The resonance sphere sat on a pedestal at the center of the hall. Seris and Dominic stood on opposite sides, the crystal between them. Place your hands on the sphere simultaneously, Elder Corin instructed. Dominic met Seris's eyes across the glowing crystal. Her tiny hands looked impossibly delicate as she raised them. He raised his own, so much larger, and together they touched the sphere's surface. Light exploded through the crystal. Dominic gasped as sensation flooded through him. The bond between them, usually a gentle presence, suddenly roared to life. He felt everything Seris felt. Her fear of failure, her determination to protect him, her growing love that she'd been afraid to fully acknowledge even to herself. And she felt him too. His awe at her strength, his admiration for her courage, his certainty that finding her had been the best accident of his life. The sphere blazed brighter, light pulsing in waves that filled the entire assembly hall. Harmonic tones rang out, pure and clear. Around them, Valenti gasped. Even the humans looked stunned. Elder Corin rose slowly from his seat, his ancient eyes wide. In all my years, I have never witnessed resonance this powerful. Theron's face had gone pale. Impossible. They've only known each other for days. The resonance sphere cannot be deceived, the elder said. What we witness is absolute truth. This bond is not only genuine, it is extraordinary. The light began to fade, but Dominic felt the bond settle into something even stronger than before. Seris was looking at him with wonder in her silver eyes, tears tracking down her lavender cheeks. The Kelthra bond between Seris Valen and Dominic Hayes is valid and recognized, Elder Corin announced. The charge that it was invoked improperly is dismissed. Theron's expression twisted with rage. This proves nothing about my supposed crimes. Actually, it proves everything. Myra stood from the gallery. In trying to discredit Lady Seris, you revealed your own desperation. The evidence stands unchallenged. You orchestrated the security breach. You tried to destroy her through manipulation and lies. You would trust the word of humans over one of your own. Theron demanded, looking at the Valenti assembly members. I trust truth, Elder Corin said firmly. And truth has been revealed today in more ways than one. He struck his staff against the floor. Theron Calix, you are found guilty of conspiracy against a council member. You are stripped of your position and banished from this station. Guards moved forward to take Theron into custody. He struggled, shouting accusations and threats, but his voice faded as they dragged him from the hall. Elder Corin looked at Seris and Dominic, still standing with the resonance sphere between them. You have proven something remarkable today. A bond that crosses species, formed in chaos, strengthened by adversity. Perhaps there is much our two peoples can learn from you. Seris bowed respectfully. We hope to serve as an example of what cooperation between our species can achieve. The assembly dispersed slowly, people talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. But Dominic only had eyes for Seris. She walked around the sphere to reach him, and even though the hall still held dozens of witnesses, he pulled her into his arms. She was so small against him, but he felt her strength through the bond, felt her joy matching his own. "We won," she whispered against his chest. "We did better than win," Dominic said, tilting her face up to look at him. "We found something real." Her smile was radiant. "My tiny alien woman who saved me from my own exhaustion." She laughed. "Your tiny alien woman? I believe the bond makes us equals, Dominic Hayes." "Absolutely equals," he agreed, then kissed her as the bond sang between them, a connection that had started with a wrong door but had become so perfectly right. New beginning. 3 months later, Dominic stood in Seris's quarters, their quarters now, making final adjustments to a new security system he designed. One that couldn't be hacked by angry rivals. Seris entered, returning from a council session. Despite her small stature, she commanded respect now in a way she never had before. The trial of truth had revealed her strength, and the reality of their bond had shifted perceptions about human-Valenti partnerships. "How was the meeting?" Dominic asked. "Productive." She came to him, fitting perfectly under his arm. They approved the new cultural exchange program. More integrated living spaces for both species. "Inspired by a certain couple," he teased. "Perhaps." She smiled up at him. "Though I doubt many will have as dramatic a beginning as we did." Dominic pulled her closer, marveling as he always did at how this tiny, fierce woman had changed his entire life. "I'm grateful for that wrong door every single day." "So am I." Seris's silver eyes sparkled. "Though I suspect you would have found your way to me eventually." "You think fate had plans?" "I think two lonely people were always meant to find each other." She reached up to touch the collar he still wore, now a symbol of choice rather than obligation. "And I think what started as survival became the greatest adventure of both our lives." Through the bond, Dominic felt her love, her contentment, her excitement for their future together. He sent his own feelings back, a wordless conversation that said everything. Outside their window, the station lights glittered against the stars, a colony where two species learned to build something beautiful together. And at the heart of it all, a human engineer and a tiny alien noblewoman proved that the strongest bonds were the ones no one saw coming. Their story had started with a mistake, but it was the best mistake either of them had ever made. The end.